The version 8 boards have arrived. I've quickly tested this video board here and found one little problem, was that the VGA connector here was missing H-sync. H-sync was actually incorrectly connected via this pull-up resistor here, which I've just disconnected now. I've just snipped off one of its legs. And it was incorrectly connected to this culprit here, which is TV sync out. Now, TV sync out was meant to go to this little connector here. Actually, they're quite big connectors. I actually don't have them populated on the board. There's space on the board, but they're not connected at all. Now, it should not have been TV sync. It should have been H sync. And I can clearly see that the problem here is this. It should have been connecting to this one. This is why when I tested it in the logic analyzer via this debug header here, which you can see just up above the VGA connector, which is here on the board, I was getting correct H-sync and V-sync signals, and I was a little bit confused until I looked at the schematic. So once I disconnected this resistor, it's no longer a pull-up, it's just using this little weak resistor here in series. So that was enough for the TV sync to then be used as an H sync. I think it was. Yeah. So with that in mind, once I connect through this VGA connector now properly, I get a good signal from this video board on my screen. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to connect these up. Now, the character board by default uses 9000 for its register selection here. So I'm going to expose that via this wire into this pin header here. And you can see here that I've got a bank selection for 9000. This kind of like reminds me that the default option for this character board is 9000. So this board contains more reminder hints for me, especially with these dip switches. Now, instead of the jumpers, now I'm using dip switches to actually select the extended bank selection for the memory right here. So here there's a little star above the default option, which is this option here, which selects, I've forgotten which way round it is, but one of them is the extended bank select for the screen and color memory, and one is for the plane. It might be the other way around. I don't quite remember anymore, but you can see here that the star is also there. You know, I should probably add that to the PCB and just add a little note here saying planes and color memory, or planes and color memory, depending on which way around it is. Also, one thing to note is that they installed the dip switches round the wrong way. I should probably put some numbering here so that they can actually see which way around the numbering. The numbering is actually meant to go around the other way, from 1 to 8 here, not 1 to 8 this way around. But you know, that's only a minor little issue here. So I haven't tested the character generation board yet. We're going to do that in a sec. And the video board here, I've already tested with the logic analyzer, and it all seems to be working in as far as the video board on its own can work. So let's plug them in and see what we get. So just before I turn everything on, this is the video conversion box that I've always pretty much been using. I did notice that it's got a nice little debugging feature. So with the TV set up to be 4x3, it's got a maximum displayable area all the way around the screen, and I've put some little masking tape markers on the screen here to show me where the maximum displayable portion is. I think this is the safe area, this solid grey portion here, and this hash marked stippled grey area here around the edge is the maximum display area. So this is probably the unsafe area, and on the left hand side here too. So I'm going to be using that as a guide when I'm running this test. Now the test that I'm going to run, hopefully when I will switch it on, should look like this. So at startup, it's waiting for me to press fire, but it should be displaying this kind of like pattern on the screen here with the correct number of horizontal and vertical character lines. And then when I press fire, it should display this screen. Now this screen is wider than the initial boot up test pattern. And we have, I think it's a full 40 characters across here, which looks pretty cool. Now this is just the characters layer that I've set up here for a quick demo. And once I press fire again, it should just scroll. And so that's what we should see with this very hacky demo code. So let's switch everything on. And it's a good sign that the power light has come on. I need to switch the video conversion box to the correct input. So we should be getting on AV3, we should be getting a signal here. There we go, RGB HV. And we'll also use RGBS. There we go. So RGBS and RGB HV work from the VGA connector now. Now this is the kind of like semi-default power on state for the video board. You can see here that the border extent is probably defaulting to FF in the latch, and FF corresponds to roughly this kind of like weird off-centered display area here, where the left border is brought all the way in and the right border is all the way at the maximum extent here. And you can see that the maximum displayable extent from the video conversion board coincides with the maximum displayable extent from, well, at least what the video conversion box is displaying. This one here, that's what it's displaying from the signal. So as you can see, that is pretty much the maximum displayable extent that it's going to show on this TV anyway, in an aspect ratio of 4:3 on an HDMI picture. So if I run that code now, the Commodore 64 is on. Let's just make sure it's in the correct waiting state of being in the menu. I think that should be fine. Let's run the code. Here we go, easy runner, and bingo. Isn't that fantastic? So this is the debug screen. Now, the test code, the background palette color is different, and that's because all of the other layers have not been pulled down to 0. All of the other layers are outputting pixel color FF because they're floating high. So that's why we've got that in the background there. I'm not clearing the last palette entry basically. But the characters layer temporarily is put into the first layer. Okay, so this is why the characters layer is still visible. And behind it are going to be a whole bunch of non-transparent or opaque layers. Anyway, so it's waiting for me to press fire, so that's what I'm going to do. And there we go. So we can see here that the right-hand side matches the maximum displayable area that we were seeing on the emulation. So on the emulation, if we refresh our memory on what we should see on this here, we've got one extra character here on the right-hand side, which doesn't quite line up because the edge of the tree is 8 pixels in. And that's what we're getting here, is that the edge of the tree is 8 pixels in from the edge of the screen, and then we've got the extra character here on the right-hand side. So the rendering for that looks good. On the left-hand side, we have the edge of the tree corresponding with the maximum displayable area from the video capture board. And we now have that down here. And if we, well, there's a slight discrepancy here, whereas in the emulation, it seems to be displaying an extra 8 pixels on the edge. That's probably because the emulation, well, obviously the emulation is not the VGA conversion box emulation, so I think I'm incorrectly displaying an extra 8 pixels where I probably shouldn't be. This is like maximum overscan, extra overscan, whereas this obviously is not showing the extra overscale on the left hand side. So I'll just have to note that down in the software notes that this seems to be the maximum displayable extent, which will probably give me 39 characters horizontal. We'll see what it is. I'll count it out later on. Anyway, we can see here that the trees look pretty good. If I look at that, and then if I press fire again, it should start scrolling, and there we go. And that all looks pretty good. So we can see here that the scrolling character layer works quite nicely, and it wraps around properly and everything else like that. So now I've got confidence that this new video board with the characters board all works together. I think I've got confidence now to go and order the rest of the boards. PCBWay did a good job, don't you think? Pretty much a working first time board, with the exception of this silly little resistor here not connecting ApeSync properly, which was my fault, not theirs. So all in all, a good test. I'm pretty happy with that. Looks quite nice with a much wider display than the standard old arcade bomb jack hardware, don't you think? This is even more usable now for game, because we've got a nice wider horizontal resolution now, and actually the vertical resolution is going to be nice and good too now, because the characters layer doesn't need to bring in the borders at all for scrolling, nor does the chars layer or anything. All of the hardware was updated to cope with a much taller screen and a much wider screen now, so that's pretty cool. Good job, well done.